Hello, I'm Elvin Wilson, and I work at the original Pancake House. Yesterday we covered syrups. We talked about syrups at the original Pancake House. We also included our new addition to the syrups that we serve there, and that is the um, pure maple syrup. We talked about that. Today, I'm in the mood for talking about the apples and the Dutch babies. Why is that? Because of how popular they are. And a lot of people that have come in to eat the apple pancakes and the Dutch babies. They really do appreciate it, and they like them a lot. And we've never had any complaints about the apple pancakes or the Dutch babies at the original Pancake House. Um, However, there is a strategy that we used in the kitchen back in the 90s, and we've gotten away from it in 2026. And that's the reason why I want to talk about it. Um, it's such it's such an original item at the original Pancake House, the apple pancakes and the Dutch babies, and the batter that we use to make the apple pancakes and the Dutch babies. It's legendary. It's legendary, and it's our German batter. It's so unique. It's hard to describe. It really, really is. The Dutch baby, in my opinion, reminds me of the elephant ear at the fair, and I like the elephant ear at the fair. As a matter of fact, on my last day that I worked at the original Pancake House, I had a Dutch baby. I had a Dutch baby for lunch, and I put some peaches on it, and it was great. It was great. I served with lemon wedges. So most customers will squeeze lemon juice over the Dutch babies, and they're good. The lemon juice is really good, and I believe it's a syrup of their choice. They can put whatever syrup they, like to put on it. If they were to ask me for a personal recommendation, I would say you can go with the cherry chiaffa on the Dutch baby, which is really, really good, or the peaches, um, even the strawberries on the Dutch babies are phenomenal, and I've seen that a lot. I've seen the Dutch babies go out with strawberries a lot. Um, but now that we've introduced peaches to the menu or the upcoming menu, right now we're featuring on the feature board. But peaches is something new that we've introduced to the original Pancake House in South Carolina. So this summer, I can see those Dutch babies being sold and people ordering the peaches to go on top of the Dutch babies. After the one I had the other day for lunch, it's fabulous. It's really, really good. It's really, really good. So today I want to talk about just strategies um, behind the grill, strategies for cooking and preparing the apple pancakes and the Dutch babies at the original Pancake House. I went to my general manager one day, and this was a long time ago, and I asked him, I said, on average, how many apples and Dutches do we sell on the weekends? And he gave me a number. And if I remember correctly, that number was, I think, was about 18 to 20 apples on a Saturday or a Sunday, and between 16 and 21 Dutch babies on a Saturday and a Sunday. And he's like, why did you want to know that number? I said, well, if I'm on the line and I know we average a certain amount of Dutch babies and apples per day, I can better prepare for that. Which means if I'm on the line, and you're giving me a number, if that number is 20, then, that gives me an idea how many I want to start with. And if we're going to consistently sell a certain amount of our pancakes and Dutch babies, then I know what's coming going into the weekend. You know what I mean? And then I'll ask them, what's the smallest amount? And if the smallest amount of apples and Dutch babies we sell would be 18, then I know that once the shift starts, I'm going to sell at least 18 apples and Dutches on a Saturday and a Sunday. So with that in mind, if I'm trying to maintain a shelf life of 2 hours once I prepare an apple pancake, then I know how many I want to start with. So I may want to start with 3 or 4. And every 2 hours, if I'm making that many, that's 4, 8, 12, you know what I mean? Maybe a smaller number, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. if I'm working and I know our peak business is about 4 or 5 hours, we do about 4 or 5 hours of high volume, then I know that if I start with three and every 2 hours I make three or float three every 2 hours, that either they're going to sell or we'll float them off. And, we can use them. If we're floating them off, we don't want to float them off into the trash can. So a lot of times when you float them, a lot of the cooks will be like, yeah, you're asking us to float them, but you're not telling us what to do once they're ready. If an apple pancake or a Dutch baby is prepared and it's ready and you're floating it and you don't have an order for it, there should be a manager working on the expo line, the opposite side of the cook line. And the manager normally helps expedite and coordinate checks and coordinate tickets. Let that manager decide whether or not that apple pancake would just be discarded, because they may be running into an issue where they have a table out there that may have been waiting a while to eat. And here's an opportunity. Whether it be the manager that go out there and speak to the table, or the actual server may go and talk to the table. When you have these items in the window and they're hot and they're sitting under the heat lamp, which is fine when you're giving an apple pancake away and you're floating them off, the biggest thing is you want to try to save the customer. You want to try to save the check. You don't want to get into a situation where you're comping a check for whatever reason because it took too long, or you're offering a discount for that check because it's taking too long, or the customers have been waiting a while. Or you get into a situation where the server might be a little frustrated because certain customers at her table are eating and certain customers are not. And that's where the genius and the strategy comes into play with the apple pancakes and the Dutch babies. Because if they're in the window and the apple pancake, it's so hot coming out of the oven, you can't eat that coming straight out of the oven. It needs time to cool down. So when they're sitting there and you have that situation, either the manager or the server can go to the table and be like, you know what, our cooks are floating off apple pancakes and Dutch babies. And if the customer is unfamiliar with that, then the server can briefly explain to them what that is. Some customers already know because they come in and they've had the apple pancake and the Dutch baby. So they may be quite aware. They might be well aware of what the server is talking about. And they'll be like, yeah, and which one would you like? If you don't want something that's too sweet, you would go with the Dutch baby. Or if you don't mind, you brought your kids along, they like sweet things, we can offer up the apple pancake while they're waiting on their meal. And you take them out some knives and a set of plates, small plates. And then while they're at the table waiting on their meal, they've got something to cut and eat while they're waiting for their food. And that does two things. Because at the end of the day, when the customer is finished eating their meal, even if they felt like they wanted a discount, it's harder for a customer to ask or complain when you presented something to them that they didn't have to pay for. And that helps a lot. That helps a lot. It prevents a lot of arguments. It prevents a lot of customer complaints. We get it all the time at the original Pancake House in South Carolina, where a customer waited so long and it wasn't anything wrong with their food. It's just the whole fact that they waited a while and, they would like some type of a discount for whatever reason. But once you presented something like an apple pancake or a Dutch baby to that table, that kind of alleviates the problem, And even if a customer wanted to ask for a discount, they couldn't, because, you put something on their table that they didn't have to pay for. And some customers even look to see, how much that item would have cost them had they ever ordered it. Or some customers have never ordered the apple pancake or the Dutch baby, and they tried it for the first time. And we presented it to them because of how long they waited to keep them happy. And now they tried it, and now the next time they come in, they may even order it. Because it was like, oh, wow, this is great. I had no idea we served that. I always saw it in the menu, but, I was afraid to order it, or wasn't sure about it, or, never had one before. And they taste those items for the first time, and they really, really like it. A lot of customers will really, really appreciate it, that you were thoughtful enough to give them something to tide them over while they were waiting for their meal. Or you got a table of four, a party of five, four or five, two people were eating, the other three are just kind of looking around, waiting on something to eat. And you offer that item to them. And those items, if they're floated properly, and they should be, because if you're starting out early in the morning, you're constantly wanting to float them in the window. And then the manager decides whether or not those items are going to be discarded or whether or not they can be used. If we're on a wait, 9 times out of 10, they can be used. They can be used. And, if we got enough of them in the window, even the servers can say, have you ever tried our apple pancake or our Dutch baby, And the customer may not have even noticed that they've been waiting a while and not even complaining. But the server just wants to keep the customers happy. They'll offer these items up to them ahead of time while they're waiting. Or that server might already know that all the food is not going to come out in one time. They'd be like, have you ever tried the apple pancake or the Dutch baby? And they'd be like, no, I haven't. And then they'll explain it. Well, the apple pancake, it has a cinnamon glaze. It's made with Granny Smith apples. And it's really, really good. Whereas our Dutch baby is, we serve it with lemon wedges. And it's made with our famous German batter. And there's a picture of it over here on the wall. And they'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, I'll try that. Again, the server already knows that the customer's food is not all going to come out at one time. The server is already aware of that, so they're already preparing for that. And then when the food starts to come out, you bring 2 entrees out to 2 customers. The other 3 customers are sitting there, but you've also brought out something for them to try while they're waiting on their meal. And it works. It works. And I highly recommend it. And I want that back for the Columbia store so bad. I want that back for the original Pancake House in South Carolina so bad. So what I'm doing is I'm constantly talking to management, explaining to them why you want to float these items and how it helps in situations, you know what I mean? And although you can't satisfy every customer, you want to try to satisfy as many customers as you can. And you'd be surprised. A lot of times when management or the server said, oh, there's nothing we could have done. That customer's just being mean. There was nothing we could have done to save this table, I understand. I have to say that I understand. But at the same time, sometimes you can kill it with kindness. You can kill it with kindness. And by offering these things, it gives customers incentives not to complain. And even if the server felt like that customer had a bad visit because you did something like that, they may have given off an impression like they had a bad visit, but then we see them again in a week. We see that customer again. And when that happens, and we do have a lot of customers that come in that are regulars at the original Pancake House in South Carolina, and some of them will come in and complain. But at the same time, we see these customers every week. We see these customers every week. And I don't work the front of the house. I'm not a front of the house manager. But a lot of times when servers will come back and they'll talk to me and tell me about things that go on out front, they want to come to the back and they want to vent a little bit. I mean? I have an open ear. They know I have an open ear to hear. And I always ask them, even when they're back there washing their hands, I always ask them, how's things going out there? Are the customers happy? How's the food looking? They know that I care, so they'll come back. And if they have a moment they want to share, they'll come back and vent with me and share some things with me. This customer comes in every week and, it's just nothing we can do to make them happy. And, as a manager, I low-key want to just leave my position and go out there and talk to these people. But that would be overexertion because, I already have a responsibility. But at the same time, in the 1990s, that was the strategy that we used. We would float these apple pancakes and these Dutch babies off. And when it comes to the apple pancake and the Dutch baby at the original Pancake House, there's always an option. If a customer complains, well, I don't want anything too sweet, then you offer up the Dutch baby, Or you might have children that are sitting at the table that like sweet things. And that's where the apple pancake comes into play. You know, and they're great. They're great, and it works. It works. You know, and before I take 10, 15, 20% off of a check for whatever reason, I may have saved that 20, 25% off the check by offering up something like an apple pancake or a Dutch baby. And it works. It works. It really, really works, and we've really, really gotten away from it. And I want to get back to that at the original Pancake House in South Carolina. And if you watch this video and you work at Original Pancake House anywhere in the world, there are over 150 locations nationwide. If you use this strategy, I'd like to know. And is it working for you? And if you don't use this strategy, or you've used it once before and stopped, then you might be feeling the same way I'm feeling. This is something that I would like to get back to. You know, you're watching this video and you're saying he's right. You know, this is something that, you know, I would like to get back to doing. And it's not that tough. It's not that tough. You know, because the cooks already have them prepared anyway. You know, I've seen some apple pancakes at the Original Pancake House in South Carolina. You know, we might have a dead day or a slow day, and you know they started 5, 6 apples that morning, and they'd still be in there. You know, several hours later, and I don't like that. You know, a lot of times I go up there and I'll see them. You know what I mean? And I don't like that. You know, I might even just maybe, you know, make a joke and ask the cook, hey, you know, I got a free moment. Would you like me to start some more apples? Or he was like, no. I was just getting ready to do it. You're good. I appreciate it. You know, and that was my way of giving the cook an incentive that I see that the apple pancakes have been in there for a while. And another thing I noticed is that a lot of times the cooks won't sugar and turn those apples. And I know why. Because when you sugar and turn the apples and that butter starts to absorb into the cinnamon sugar, you get that cinnamon glaze, which the customers love it. It's a nice presentation. But if that cinnamon touches your skin, it will burn you. And so the cooks have gotten into a habit where they'll only sugar and turn the apple pancakes when they have an order for it. So that when the apple pancakes are prepared, it's not so much of a glaze that it's so bad that it oozes down over top of the apple pancake and can potentially burn you if you're not careful. But there's a strategy for that as well. You know, a lot of times when I'm seasoning my apple pancakes with cinnamon sugar, I'll just put a nice portion of the cinnamon sugar at the very base of the apple pancake before I flip it. A lot of cooks, what they'll do is they'll take the cinnamon sugar and they want to spread it all around the apple pancake. And that's a mistake, because then you get into that situation if you do sugar and turn it early, and now the butter has soaked into the cinnamon sugar when you go to sell it, your chances of burning yourself increases. So you basically want to add your cinnamon sugar at the center of the apple pancake. Add the same amount. I'm not saying put anything less or anything more, but the amount of cinnamon sugar that you would normally put on the apple pancake, you want to put it right there at the center of the apple pancake, and then flip it. That way when the butter soaks into it, it's going to be at the center, and then when it bakes, you turn it over onto the plate, and then that cinnamon glaze oozes down in a way where it's not all over the place and all over the side of the plate, or splashing where it could potentially burn you. Yeah. So those are all great strategies. Yeah. And with the Dutch baby, you know, of course, you want to find a nice hot oven that you're not constantly opening and closing. Find your space, you know. There's always that one oven that's staying closed that's not being utilized. You know, that might be the oven where you want to adjust the temperature, put the temperature where it needs to be for cooking apple pancakes and Dutch babies. You might want to keep them there, you know, when you're cooking them. That way, if you're in and out of the convection oven because you got your omelets up there and you need to look in there and you're constantly opening and closing the door, that might not be where you want to cook your apple pancakes and your Dutch babies. You might want to have them in another oven that you don't open so much, so that it can hold the proper heat and you can get the proper maximum height from your apple pancakes and your Dutch babies, so that you can wow the customers, you know. Because a lot of times those Dutch babies, they go out and they are beautiful. And I want to show you pictures in the future of how they look when they go out. Yeah, I definitely want you to see that in real time. Yeah. So if you watched this video and you've made it this far, I thank you for watching. And I hope that the information I shared today was helpful for you. If you're a cook or a manager at the Original Pancake House. And yeah, yeah. The Original Pancake House. I love that place. I really, really do. And, I thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.